Welcome. And, one of the added features of being here in person is you get to hear all my jokes before the cameras go on. So come on down, everybody. Join us. But the idea that we are living in an island of fantasy, right, is kind of the theme of the talk this morning. If you remember that show, Fantasy Island, from back in the 70s, everybody went there and they basically got what they're wishing for, right? And it could be beautiful or horrible. And it was always like within them. Like they showed up and whatever was within them came out. That was sort of the mystery of that island, right? And they all left with smiles and handshakes and hugs, so it couldn't have been all too bad. Because there's like this idea of catharsis, right? We're able to purge some of the darkness by first having it come up, confront it, look at it, deal with it, and then let it go. And so we've been doing this, I think. If we're coming to a service like this is not new to anyone here in their own individual spiritual walk. That we've had to look at our shadows, we've had to look at our darkness and difficulties and challenges, shortcomings and failures, and gain insight and wisdom from having gone through those experiences and difficulties. And because we're living in a holographic universe, there's really no such thing as an isolated individual. That was one of Buddha's great teachings, right? There's really no isolated individuality. Everything is interdependent or interbeing. And so whatever we're experiencing on an individual level in a microcosmic way, holographically speaking, we will experience that collectively because we are one self on a collective level as well as an individual level. And so as we are undergoing this transformation individually, which is really what this service focuses and centers on, is that we are undergoing a metamorphosis. We are transforming from our baseline of being just a human animal, and we are awakening something profound and divine within, which is actually transforming us into a divine being so that we can remember this is who we really are, right? Well, if you've been studying these teachings for some time, you know that this is also predicted or prophesied on a collective level. I mean, if you want to just deal with the Buddhist teachings, there is, the Shambhala teachings that are given in Tibet. The Dalai Lama does these mass initiations for the past 25 years or so in the Shambhala teachings. And in the Shambhala teachings, the legend or the story goes that there are the forces of light and the forces of darkness, and towards the end of the age or the shift of the ages, we're going to have all of the darkness surface, and through this cathartic process, we're going to come out on the other side if we're choosing Dharma or if we're choosing the awakening process, right? We see this within the Jewish and the Islamic and the Christian traditions as well, that there is a prophecy of the end of days, the culmination of history, the sloughing off of a predatorial system of egoic selfishness, and an awakening of a more Christ or divine-centered community where we all recognize our shared unity, right? That's in the word community. It's unity with one another. And, we're going to look today at a few things, but one of them we'll keep coming back to is this idea of community and the unity in community. Because in my estimation, and I'm not alone, it's our only way of survival as a collective species on this planet in historical time. Like we can always abstract and transcend and, none of this is real, this universe never happened. We could go with those, unborn teachings that you find in Buddhism and Vedanta. But if we're really sort of looking at full integration, that this is a way of looking at ourselves and one another in the here and the now as it appears, and putting these teachings into full-blown embodiment, right, where we're no longer going to tolerate the shadow side without looking at it, dealing with it, and bringing love or understanding to it. And we're going to make informed choices based on the wisdom that we are allowing to emerge within our awareness. We, as we'll see in some of the readings this morning, we are the catalysts of world change. We don't think of ourselves like that oftentimes, but it's when the heat goes up and the pressures become unbearable that we begin to feel a stirring or a movement within, that there's something deeper within us that's needing to emerge at this time in history because our backs are against the wall as a species. Terence McKenna, one of the great pioneers of alternative thinking and psychedelia, he was also a polymath and a brilliant philosopher. Terence McKenna once gave a talk, and his talk, I think, was something along the lines of, and I wouldn't phrase it this way, but it gets to the point, is it right for smart people to have hope? Because he says, foolish people will have hope because they have an unexamined understanding of what they're hoping about. But smart people kind of tally up all that's going on and are looking at things as they seem to be appearing. And if you're really doing deeper research, it doesn't look good. Like if you're really not having your head in the sand and you're looking at what's going on and the trajectory of some of what is designed for future rolling out projects, it doesn't look good, right? So can we have hope when we take the blinders off and really look at what's going on? And so this is where I would give it a resounding yes. We can have hope, because it also gets back to what I said just a moment ago. We are the catalyst for change. And our consciousness is actually what's going to make the determining factor in how history goes. Just like we've looked with the quantum revolution at the turn of the last century, when you observe something like an electron, which is really the fabric of materiality, it changes based on your observation of it. Well, the same thing goes with the laws of perception at any scale. How you're looking at something and what you're expecting to see is what you will then bring about in your awareness. So we have to actually undergo, like I've talked about many times, a paradigm shift of sorts. Because we've been programmed, and oftentimes unconsciously from wee high, to expect to see the normative reality continuing to unfold in the status quo way. And not only that, but based on our educational system, which the pioneers of our educational system, a quote real quick, "I don't want thinkers, I want workers." That was the fundamental money behind our public educational system. So we were brought up to be workers. That means following orders, standing up when the bell rings, getting in line, and just doing what we're told by an authority above us. We were programmed to acquiesce to the status quo. We don't have that luxury anymore. The higher levels of society are not educated that way. They're educated in a very different way. They are educated to question authority, to actually be the authority, to say how things are going to go and then carry it out. This is what we all must recognize now. We are the authority, in a sense, based on what we're looking to experience and what we're willing and wanting to see. We will change the tide of history if we can no longer fall prey to these unconscious impulses to acquiesce to the status quo. Okay? Now, again, it's not always going to sound like love, light, and peace, and I'm not going to be oming all the time this morning. But this is also part of it. This is also baked into a revolutionary spirituality. I mean, if you read the Gospels, Jesus had those beautiful mountaintop teachings, but he also had boots on the ground teachings that were designed to shift society, right? And so one of the pitfalls that I have a concern with in the way that I see the landscape of esoteric teachings and spirituality is that we can oftentimes get anesthetized in our own private meditation rooms with our incense and our bells and our gongs and our soft music and our Buddha statues or whatever it is that you have your fancy with. It's a fantasy island. And if we are staying within our little bubbles because we happen to be in a Western, affluent area in the world where we are insulated from 99% of what's going on, and we are so propagandized that we don't really know what's really going on, then we are actually in a place where our spirituality can actually be a stumbling block, an impediment, something that keeps us from acting fully as awakened beings in the present moment. Okay? So again, you might not agree with everything I'm saying up here today. That's okay. It's not going to stop me from saying it, but I also respect your point of view. But bottom line, though, everything that I'm saying and what's to follow is all designed to bring us into deeper recognition of our unity and the alarming need that we have for this deeper unity to emerge and be what we actually stand for unequivocally at this point. It's time to wake up. So we're going to start waking up a little bit with the poetry of Kabir. I touched on this last week. We'll read this one poem again, and then we'll go into others of his that we haven't covered. This happens to be the one that is ribald, the one that's kind of, a little on the street side of lingo. This is Kabir getting us into the right frame of mind. Same skin, same bones, same faces. Same piss, same blood, same marrow. Everyone comes from a sperm drop. So who's a high class? Who's a lower class? Who's a Hindu? Who's a Muslim? Who's a Jew? Go beyond Vedas, Quran, Torah, heaven, hell. Realize the God in you. Kabir says, listen, friends, we need a new human race. And what he means by that is a human race that's not rooted within separation and division. The new human race is actually the ancient human race, the human race that recognizes we are one blood, one species, one organism. No matter where we are in the world, no matter what culture we are coming from, no matter what language we speak, no matter what our sexuality or our gender or anything else, the baseline is this prior unity of being human. Let that be the foundation upon which we build all of our relationships, both individual and collective. That's the new humanity. Now here comes the rub of the revolution. In Kabir's revolution, everyone dies. He's not finished. And is reborn in him. So how can we see the shared unity unless we're all looking through the same eye or have the same vision, this awakened spiritual eye? In Buddhism, it's called the Dharma eye. In Islam, it's called the Fitra. In Christianity, it's called metanoia. In Judaism, it's called the neshama. In Taoism, it's called the inner man of light. Whatever way, whatever language, whatever culture, it's not important what word you use. Like he says in A Course in Miracles, a universal theology is impossible. We can't agree at the conceptual level with our physical eyes. But a shared experience is necessary, is how that verse finishes in the Course. A shared experience can only come when we all awaken the spiritual eye and we recognize our prior unity. That's the revolution. We die to ourselves and we're reborn as our spiritual identities. And we do this by loving one another. This is how it begins to grow and cultivate within our awareness, by actually extending love, unconditional love to one another, and not tolerating lacks of love in whatever forms they may be showing up. That's how you cultivate this shared human society. Kabir goes on. And every stone sings Hari, Hari, right? God's sacred name. Again, Kabir going with the way that Kabir likes to go. And the dog turd in the stinking puddle glitters more brilliantly than an emperor's onyx ring. The awakened vision. Mullahs, when you see his real world, you'll fling yourself off your minaret. Oh, make a bonfire of all your holy books and throw yourself in. The day is coming. The day is already here. So, Kabir didn't have access to TV or entertainment news, but it would just about as well fit this situation as it did in his day. So this is what he says here. Seeing everyone rushing headlong to their doom, Kabir shouts, "Wake up, you idiots! Wake up! You're being robbed blind in broad daylight." What's being robbed? The treasure of our shared humanity. You know, again, in A Course in Miracles, it says that a tiny mad idea crept into the mind of God's enlightened child, and that enlightened being forgot to laugh. This tiny mad idea is often referred to in the Course as the wanderer or the stranger. And what really it is it's a psychotic way of thinking and acting and behaving. And so in our collective humanity, at some point, there was a psychotic idea that sort of got into our DNA like a virus. And we are seeing one another oftentimes through the eyes of that sickness. And some people have really embraced the psychosis. They often are the administrators. Just goes to show you. But anyway, I'm sorry. Sorry, Lee. What we have to recognize is that this psychosis first has to be dealt within. Like, we cannot tolerate that level of thinking separately anymore. But also we have to recognize it in its symptoms as it shows up in our appointed leaders and no longer allow the manifestation of a full-blown psychosis in a dark suit or a power suit to tell us what reality is or what we all should do collectively, no matter what party that is. If you really are paying attention, there's only one party, I'm sorry, and that is psychosis. We're being robbed in broad daylight. Open your eye. And it's when you open your eye, and this is the beauty of it, this is the tantra of it, you're not going to hate or judge or condemn the psychotics. You're going to recognize that, but you're also going to love them in a way that will take them out of being a harm to others, and they will be dealt with in a loving, compassionate way. But no longer will we tolerate this exploitation and the thievery that's going on and the mass murder that's going on. We will want no more of it because we are a holographic being. If we're no longer eating animals and we're no longer wanting to drive a car that pollutes the environment, well, don't we extend that to a larger field of action and activity, right? First, let's do it, remove the plank within our own eye, And then we can see clearly and remove the speck in our brother's eye, no longer tolerating the psychosis. And on that note, Kabir. Lee, cover your ears. What more hell do you need than a cow screaming as it's flayed? Than an old man beaten to death by thugs for being of the wrong ethnicity? Than a field of corpses after a battle being devoured by vultures? And what more heaven could you ever find than the one moment that changes everything, that lasts forever, when he shows his face and you see your own? C.S. Lewis once wrote a book, Till We Have Faces. Great title. Because C.S. Lewis, as a Christian, a thoughtful Christian, recognized that we don't know ourselves yet. Our true identity hasn't emerged in our awareness. And I think he was playing off of one of the scriptures in 1 John where it says, and when he appears, we shall be like him, perceiving him as he is. In other words, until he appears in your perception, you don't know your identity. Because identity is a shared reality. It's a community. That's why when you study A Course in Miracles, it's all about you cannot wake up alone. There's no individual that wakes up. You wake up knowing you're the self, the Buddha nature, whatever language you want to use, in all beings. So first he has to appear within us and then show us his face. Like it says in the Quran, wherever you look, there is his face. We don't know that yet because we don't know our face. So what Kabir is saying is we have to first burrow deep within our own hearts, past all of our false conditioning and our acquiescence to the status quo, and discover this luminous ground of our own being and let him reveal himself to us. Then we will see, because the plank will be out of our eye. Then we can recognize all of our brothers, even the most psychotic and the ones that want to destroy life, are still carrying the spark. And for that reason, they are to be loved in a way that is skillful and wise, but loved nonetheless. And then he says this, on note, on perfect keeping with what we were saying. My beloved gave me a lamp brimming with the oil of love and with a wick that can never run short. By its light, I've finished all transactions and will never come back to this crazy bazaar. Okay. So what Kabir is saying is when that light is revealed within our heart, when we know our face as the face of God, the craziness is gone. It's the end of insanity. And as we keep coming back to this, both in our Sunday morning talks and in our Monday evening studies of the Course, the way that consciousness works, and it's been borne out through direct experience, is that you are projecting internally and seeing it externally, right? That we are the dreamer of our dream, as they would say in Buddhism, or the Course. Squirrel! Take it back. And so, we have to discipline our thoughts. Is the real point, right? It shows up on cue. And so what we're recognizing then is whatever is within appears without. And as it says in A Course in Miracles, the world is actually a screen, a blank screen. And we are all individually and collectively projecting our internal state onto the screen, and it's taking form, just like your dreams take form. And it's highly symbolic. And it's a direct expression or representation of your own mental content. And so, as he says in A Course in Miracles, this world that we see that seems to exist apart from the oneness of God is a dream of collective insanity. That's how it's described in A Course in Miracles. It's a dream of collective insanity. So there's no hope here, right? As Dante was told above the gates of the Inferno as he was entering, abandon all hope, ye who enter here. So if you think you can find peace and joy and pleasure in this crazy bazaar, which is simply a blank screen that is being used to project internal states of chaotic and ignorant displays of their own spiritual amnesia, then we're looking in the wrong place. And so we want to first recognize, as Buddha had beautifully stated within very much like an Ayurvedic or a medicinal laying out, the Four Noble Truths. If you know this, it's very much like a doctor of Ayurveda, the medical form of ancient India, diagnosing a situation. The first noble truth is, we have a fatal disease. The fatal disease is we're unsatisfied because we're trying to find sanity in an insane place. And what's fueling that disease is this constant craving and clinging to the I, me, and mine. We want it for ourselves. The only way that can end, as Kabir had said, is you got to go nirodha. You got to die to yourself. You go completely to 0 point. And then in that 0 point state, or nirodha, or cessation, you enter nirvana. And nirvana is waking up to recognize the shared unity, the interdependence. And so this is where we have to diagnose that we are insane when we think of ourselves as separate beings and everybody else is separate. That is textbook insanity. And until we face that shadow within ourselves, we're going to keep projecting our insanity onto the screen of the world. And so I brought another book along to help us with this remedy. It's called God's Psychology. And it's by Baba Mahayadeen, a great Sufi master who passed away in 1986, so a contemporary. So just a little bit from Bawa. My God, help me. May God help us. Psychology, God's psychology. Love. Everything that has appeared in the world since the time it was created is crazy. There is nothing that is not crazy. There is no being that is not crazy. Everything is crazy. Every thought is crazy. Every desire is crazy. Every intention is crazy. Every fascination is crazy. Hunger and disease are craziness. This birth itself is crazy. Whatever has appeared is crazy. So many tens of millions of crazinesses arise from the 5 elements, from the particle, from the atom, from the virus, and from the connection of the cells. Anything that attacks another is crazy. Anything that kills another is crazy. Anything that eats another is crazy. Crazy is like this. We must understand him, that one treasure that understands all these crazinesses. He's the only one without craziness. He's the one who gives treatment to the soul. He is the one who treats the innermost heart. He is the one who gives comfort. He is the one who gives peace. And he is the one who treats all lives with equality. He is the one who demonstrates equality, tranquility, and peace. That power makes us find peace and tranquility in the heart. That power has no race, no religious fanaticism, no scriptures and no philosophies. It's beyond this. It has no color, no hue, no form, and no shape. It is beyond this. It has no I and no you. It is beyond this. It has no night and no day. It is beyond this. It has no disease, no illness, no hunger, and no old age. It is beyond this. It has no pride, no praise, and no differences. It is beyond this. It has no birth, no death, no end, and no destruction. It is beyond this. It has no house, no property, no wife, no children, no relatives, and no form. It is beyond this. It has no color, no hue, no language, speech, or breath. It is beyond this. So Bawa asks, who is crazy? And in what way? When we understand what is crazy, we will know that there is only one who is not crazy, and that everything else is crazy. It's back to the Buddhist Noble Truths. You are suffering from being crazy. You're looking for something that you can't find where you're looking for it. Who keeps repeating that, hoping out for a better outcome? Actually, the Sanskrit word samsara is literally or dynamically translated as repetitive history. In other words, we keep making the same mistakes over and over again in samsara, hoping to find what we can never find there. The only way Buddha says that we can have peace is to stop and die to that clinging of the self. And then when we go into that open nirvanic state, we can find reality. We can find, as Bawa is saying, him, the beloved. When we understand what is crazy, we will know that there is only one who is not crazy, and that everything else is crazy. We will understand that we and everything else are crazy. Aren't you glad you're here this morning? Yeah, right? So, and again, there's a section in the Course where Jesus says, yes, this tiny mad idea crept into our mind in the eternal superconscious state, and it gave birth to a crazy world where everything's eating and killing each other. This is not a world that's made by love. The Course is very clear of that. It's an insane world, a collective insane projection. And yet he has a section in A Course in Miracles that's entitled Laughing Away the Tiny Mad Idea, because it really doesn't affect reality, only the dream. And if you're a dream figure, you're crazy. If you think you're the body in this dream world, in this crazy bazaar, you're crazy. That's why you're seeing a crazy bazaar. It's an internal conflict that's being projected onto the screen of the world. Heal your crazy, and you'll heal the world, because you will see his light where there was once you're crazy. remember, this whole talk was born out of me wrestling with my own insanity the past few days. Because I do pay attention to, independent media, and I get, as best of a story as I can about what's going on. And I've been doing this for some time. And I've been tracking the trajectory of this beast that's trying to, totalize our reality in a very unpleasant way. And it can weigh on the mind when the mind thinks it's part of the dream. That's why you have to recognize you have to end your crazy, or you will just be a pawn within this insane dream, right? Now, Bawa goes into this jazz-like explosion of crazy. So indulge him. I think you'll enjoy it. One has hunger craziness. One is money crazy. One is love crazy. One is woman crazy. One is house crazy. One is crazy about tastes. One has acting craziness. One has the 64 sexual games craziness. And one is crazy for the 64 arts and sciences. One is husband crazy. One is wife crazy. And one is children crazy. One is desire crazy, one is clothes crazy, and another is makeup crazy. One is job crazy, one is education crazy, one is religion crazy, and one is race crazy. One is crazy about politics, one is crazy about praise, one is crazy about miracles, one is crazy about occult powers, one is crazy about yoga. One has a craziness to draw. One is crazy about gems. One is crazy about flying in the sky. And one is crazy about boring into the earth. One has relations and blood ties craziness. One has a father craziness. One has a brother's craziness, a sister's. One is crazy about gardens. One is crazy about homes. One is crazy about temples. One is crazy about bathing. One is crazy about eating. And he goes on and on and on, because what he's doing, he's covering every facet, every minutia of our life. And he's saying, there's no way out of being crazy. When you put your makeup on, if you think you're that separate body putting your makeup on, you're makeup crazy. When you go to a store and you think you're all alone in your own mind and you pick something off the rack and you're just there as that separate person in that separate world, as that dream figure, you're clothes crazy. One is crazy about drugs. One has craziness to take marijuana, another to take opium, another to take LSD. One has a craziness to roam freely. One is school crazy. One has a craziness to be beautiful. One has a family craziness. One has a unity craziness. That's a good one. I didn't read that when I first read it. It didn't connect. So this unity that we're all about here this morning cannot come conceptually. That's something that Lisa is very good at pointing out to me sometimes. When she shows me, in her most loving, delightful way, that there are parts of my thinking that are still very conceptual. And and this is why these pressures come, I need to ground them in actual experience. And so unity crazy is when we're trying to get unity at the surface level. And it's forced, and it's fabricated and artificial. We need to die to being the center of ourselves and give ourselves unconditionally, lovingly, patiently, kindly, compassionately to one another. Right? Something that I really have a hard time to do. That's one of the reasons why I have a partner that displays it so beautifully. One has a craziness of wanting male children. One another has the craziness of wanting female children. One has homosexual craziness. One has lesbian craziness. And one has bisexual relationship craziness. Bawa is covering all the bases. One is crazy for solitude. One is crazy to be in the jungle. And another is crazy to be in the city. One has a craziness of wanting sex all the time. One has a craziness of hating everything. You get the point. Like this, there are countless crazinesses in the world. These are all the crazinesses of creation. All the countless crazinesses of creation rolled together enter human beings and grab hold of their mind. When all of these thoughts enter and grab hold of us, we are crazy. Every thought is crazy. That's a great practice for your meditation. Very Zen-like, but adding this nice little twist. Every thought you think as a separate being is crazy. That's why in A Course in Miracles in the workbook, he's saying your good and your bad thoughts are all the same. They're both insane because they're coming from a separate mind that thinks that it exists apart from its source. So when you recognize your good and your bad thoughts are really just a reinforcement of your own crazy, and you give those up, he says in the Course workbook that you'll discover this substratum, this luminous being that was being veiled by the clouds of your crazy thinking. If you're not feeding those crazy thoughts anymore, the clouds thin out and break up. Your erroneous perception dissolves, and you'll see that here and now is the luminosity of heaven, right? Like Kabir said, the day is coming. It's already here. Just we have to give up our crazy thoughts and act from this place of unconditional love, but with a warrior spirit that will not tolerate lacks of love and psychosis under whatever guise. Every thought is crazy. We must understand who has what kind of craziness and what kind of qualities. A human being must discover how many kinds of craziness exist within himself. How many kinds of craziness exist in the world? And what kinds of crazinesses others have? What is the craziness of suffering? What is the craziness of sorrow? What is the craziness of separations? What is the craziness of relations and family? And then finally here from Bawa. Having first understood what kinds of crazinesses exist within himself, and having understood what is within God, a human being must cure his own craziness by taking within himself the peace that is within God. He must check everything, and if he can find peace within himself, that will be exalted learning. That is psychology, God's psychology. So Bawa elsewhere in this book will say that it's only by doing this, by searching your mind carefully and getting rid of all of your crazy thoughts and only wanting peace, God's peace, that we then become God's instruments in the world. He says it's the only way that God will show up in the world. God shows up through us. He's not coming in the clouds in this mythological idea that if we create enough of the tribulation scenarios, somehow he's going to ride in with his luminous army of angels. We are, I would think, beyond that mythological understanding. That's all true, symbolically, but it happens on the screen of your own perception, that luminous heaven with the angels will come riding in to your awareness. You will undergo your own apocalypse. But you have to have the willingness to accept his peace and give up your crazy. And remember, I'm speaking to myself first and foremost. I felt an unction. This was, something that I felt was pressing on me. In my own little sphere, I have a responsibility, and I have to be true to that. And whoever's willing to listen, I'm going to speak the way that I think I need to speak, and the way that I feel like I'm being guided to speak. And this is, again, something that I am not trying to enforce on anybody else. In fact, it's really just a choice that you must make if it makes sense to you. But I do try to remove any obscurity in making that choice for yourself. That's my intention. And so along those lines, in our final trip this morning, along this path of unity and world transformation, I brought this book I've shared with you guys before. It's called Not Two is Peace. And although I have strong reservations with much of Adida Samraj in his teachings, his life and teachings, when he was brilliant, okay? But I do not advocate anything to do with the Taoist community. Just want to put that out there. So Adida was asked to write this, what first started as a letter, by someone who was in Kosovo in 1999 and working for the UN and trying to bring peace to that region. And that UN official asked Adida, would you mind writing something that would help us, enter a new view of what needs to take place in this coming century? Remember, 1999. We got to start shedding these old tribal ways because it's going to destroy our world. And so Adida took to pen, and here are some of the things he wrote. This is chapter 1, entitled, On the Dangers of the Old Tribalisms and the Necessity for a Global Cooperative Forum based on the prior unity of humankind. First rubric. The old moral, social, and political order of humankind is now dead. This is the moment when it will be decided what the future is going to be. The future is either going to be catastrophic disaster, or it is going to be the turnabout moment in human history, in which humankind will step out of its dark ages of tribalism into a new mode of human cooperative order. This next handful of years is the period in which this choice has to be animated, one way or another. All generations now alive will have to make these things right, or everything is lost. The old civilization is about tribalism. The new politics is about the civilization of humankind as a whole, and only this has the potential for a viable human future. Humankind cannot survive a tribal world. So again, think critically and clearly what you're doing individually in your own spiritual development and cultivation. You're ridding yourself of separativeness, divisiveness, hostility, anger, attack thoughts, etc. There comes a time where this reaches a tipping point, and it begins, as Jesus says in A Course in Miracles, to extend into the world. What we're being told here, and what I think is showing up as writing on the wall, is we got to speed it up. We got to be more vigilant for the kingdom, so to speak, because we are putting ourselves, I think by design, in a pressure cooker, which will leave us, as Lisa likes to say, no wiggle room. A little bit more from Adida. Wise leadership is essential for humanity now. The necessity is for those who have the clarity to see what is going on and who know what to do about it to get the support of the human populations. In other words, be selective and highly scrutinous of who you're electing for your leaders. Right? That's what he's saying. We need leaders that have a clear vision and will steer the global communities in a direction that benefits all and not the few, not the tribes. The kind of leadership needed begins with disciplined individuals who are responsibly managing their own lives rather than merely going along with the consumerism of conventional society. And then this is what Adida says to all of us. The modern everyday man, or the modern everyman of consumer society, is a propagandized individual, participating in illusions and effectively self-destructing. So, welcome to Fantasy Island. You got off the plane and you entered this crazy bazaar. And you're on your journey here. You're here, whether we are conscious of it or not, to manifest the divine and see it shine onto the screen of the world, where even the turd in the dirty puddle becomes more beautiful and magnificent than the onyx ring of the king. We're here to revolutionize our own consciousness and see it within everything, right? No one alive right now is exempt from that existential choice. Stop hiding. Stop numbing and using spirituality as a numbing agent. Clear seeing. And again, I'm speaking in a mirror. Last thing here, I got a few minutes to torture you some more. The modern everyman is being created by the power system of the world because it is in the interest of that power system for there to be consumer egos who are self-involved, self-seeking, and stupefied. That's the brand. Humankind now needs to choose its collective survival and well-being in the real world rather than determining its politics based on old mythologies. There has to be a global understanding that world peace requires stepping beyond both religious mythologies and secular ideologies. Remember Bawa's words, "He is more than this. He is more than this." Beyond all of our labels, beyond all of our ideas, that's where we have to tunnel. All of our thoughts are crazy. We come to the luminous ground that is more than this, and we literally get transformed by it. Then we can see the more than this in everything and everyone. And again, I'll finish with Kabir's beautiful image, even the turd in the puddle. Blue bag's going to go around. Thank you for tolerating all of that. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions? Yeah, so tribal in this regard is where it's a bigger aggregate of ego. So it would just be a more collective ego. So my tribe would be not your tribe. And so it's still based on division, separation, not willing to share resources, wanting to take somebody else's land, things like that. Anybody else? That's it, yes. We just bless the offering and we charge it with the intention that it may be a catalyst of revolution in consciousness in whatever form it may take, that others may awaken to their deeper unity and true love with one another. And so it is. Amen. Final thoughts? Good? Let's rise, seal the deal. Oh, before we pray out, if you don't know, I've been sending invites to the Bible class that's coming up. I think you guys, if you like this conversation, you'll love that study. It's going to be Wednesdays starting December 6th. We'll meet live here in the sanctuary, or you can watch at home or wherever from Zoom. So if you don't get my emails and you want to, see me afterwards. Okay, so coming into the heart space, knowing that the divine presence dwells here in its perfection and invites us inward, that we may know our face. And in this awakening to our true identity, the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us wherever we are. God is. Amen. Thank you all. I love you guys. I appreciate you. Have a beautiful day. We'll see you next time, maybe tomorrow night at 7:15 for A Course in Miracles.